My sister stole my fiancé, then sent me a wedding invitation with a note that said, "Come see what true love looks like." They expected me to show up in tears. I did show up, but dressed in white. When the priest asked, "Does anyone object?" I said, "I object," and handed him a box. My sister's face went pale when she saw what was inside. Imagine catching your fiancé in bed with your own little sister, just 3 months before your dream wedding. And then, the ultimate slap in the face, a pristine white invitation to their wedding, with a handwritten note that read, "Come see what true love looks like." Most people would crawl into a hole and never come out, or show up a sobbing mess. But I showed up in my wedding dress, with a secret that would shatter their perfect day and change all our lives forever. The look on Sophia's face when she realized she'd just lost $8 million? Absolutely, devastatingly priceless. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The whispers hit me like a physical wave the moment I pushed open the heavy oak doors of St. Catherine's Cathedral. 200 heads turned in unison, a ripple of disbelief spreading through the pews. I could hear the gasps, feel the shock radiating from every single person in that sacred space. Is that the ex? Why is she wearing white? The audacity. I just kept my chin high, my steps measured and deliberate on the burgundy carpet. My Versace dress, yes, the one I'd originally bought for my own wedding, hugged my curves perfectly. The morning light, streaming through the stained glass windows, caught the subtle pearl beading, making me shimmer with each step. And there they were, at the altar. Sophia, my baby sister, draped in ivory silk and lace, her blonde hair crowned with white roses. And beside her, Marcus, in his charcoal tuxedo, the very same one he'd picked out with me last year. His face drained of all color when our eyes met across the aisle. Suddenly, Mrs. Patterson, the wedding coordinator, was scrambling towards me, her face flushed with panic. "Miss Anderson, we weren't expecting. My invitation says 2 o'clock, I said, my voice eerily calm, holding up the pearl cardstock. "I'm right on time." I slid into a pew, 3 rows from the back, crossing my legs elegantly. My mother twisted around from the front row, her mouth opening and closing like a goldfish. Dad's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching from 20 feet away. But it was Sophia's reaction that truly fed my resolve. She grabbed Marcus's arm, her perfectly painted lips moving rapidly. Even from here, I could read the raw fury in her body language. Good. Let her wonder. Let her worry. The organ music swelled, a desperate attempt to restore order to the beautiful chaos I'd created simply by showing up. Father Michael cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he glanced between the bride and me. The tension in that cathedral was so thick, you really could cut it with a knife. What none of them knew, not Sophia, not Marcus, not even my parents, was that I held all the cards. The small wooden box in my purse wasn't just any box. It contained 6 months of patience, decades of careful planning, and the kind of justice that comes wrapped in very specific legal documents. The ceremony was about to begin, and I was exactly where I needed to be. Just 2 weeks earlier, I'd been sorting through mail in my downtown apartment when I saw it. That envelope, with Sophia's familiar, looping handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, already knowing, deep down, what I'd find inside. The invitation was printed on pearl cardstock, the exact same design I'd chosen for our wedding. The same elegant font, the same formal wording. She'd even used the same calligrapher. But it was the handwritten note, tucked inside, that made my blood run cold. "Dearest Fiona, I know this might be difficult, but family should celebrate family. Come see what true love looks like. We'd hate for you to miss it. Love always, Sophia and Marcus." I stood there in my kitchen, reading those words over and over, the cruelty of it, the calculated malice. She wasn't just taking my fiancé, she was rubbing my face in it, using my own wedding plans as her weapon. That night, I'd called my best friend Rachel. "Don't go," she'd begged. "It's what she wants. To humiliate you." But Rachel didn't know what I knew. She didn't know about the meeting I'd had with James Mitchell, my grandmother's lawyer, just 1 week before. She didn't know about the documents sitting in his office safe, waiting for the perfect moment. "I'm going," I told her, my voice steady, betraying none of the swirling emotions inside. And I'm going to give them a wedding they'll never forget. I spent the next 2 weeks in perfect preparation. Not for revenge, no. That was too simple, too emotional. This was about justice. About truth. About finally, after 28 years of being the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who never made waves, standing up and claiming what was rightfully mine. I'd even called Marcus once. He'd answered on the third ring, his voice dripping with guilt and defensiveness. Fiona, I can explain, save it for someone who cares. I'd cut him off. I just wanted to make sure you're happy with your choice. I what? $8 million happy, Marcus. Hope she's worth it. I'd hung up before he could respond. Let him wonder what I meant. Let him lose sleep trying to figure it out. Men like Marcus always thought they were the smartest person in the room. He was about to learn differently. The invitation still sat on my coffee table the morning of the wedding, that cruel note visible beneath it. But I wasn't the same woman who'd received it. I was someone stronger, someone who'd finally learned that being nice and being weak weren't the same thing. Growing up, being the older sister should have meant something. In most families, it did. But in the Anderson household, I was the rough draft, and Sophia was the masterpiece. It started when we were kids. While Sophia got a gleaming white BMW with a red bow for her 16th birthday, I got a lecture about responsibility and a bus pass. You need to learn the value of hard work, Dad had said, while Sophia posted Instagram photos from the driver's seat. At every family gathering, the comparisons were constant. Sophia is so outgoing. Sophia lights up the room. Why can't you be more like your sister, Fiona? I was the straight-A student who got into MIT for architecture. Sophia barely graduated from state school with a communications degree. Guess whose graduation party was bigger? You're too serious, Mom would say, frowning at my sketches and blueprints. Men don't like women who are too smart. Meanwhile, Sophia floated through life on charm and cheekbones, taking whatever she wanted. My prom date. My spot on the varsity tennis team. She didn't even play tennis until she saw me win districts. My internship at Preston Architecture until she convinced them she'd be better at client relations. But there was one person who saw through it all. Grandma Eleanor. You have something Sophia will never have, she told me once, her weathered hands covering mine. Substance, patience, the ability to build something real. I thought she meant my architecture career. Now, sitting in this cathedral, I understood she'd meant so much more. The pattern with Sophia was always the same. She'd see something that made me happy, decide she deserved it more, and take it. Our parents enabled it every single time. Sophia's just spirited, they'd say. You're the mature one, Fiona. Be the bigger person. I'd been the bigger person for 32 years. I'd smiled through the pain, swallowed my anger, accepted the unfairness. Even when she'd started flirting with Marcus at my own engagement party, I'd told myself I was imagining things. You're paranoid, Marcus had said when I'd brought it up. She's your sister. She's just being friendly. 3 months later, I'd found them in our bed, in the apartment I paid for, on the sheets we'd received as an engagement gift. And still, our parents had found a way to make it my fault. You work too much. You should have paid more attention to him. But today, the rough draft was about to become the final edition. Sophia's betrayals had a pattern, a signature on every crime scene. She always wanted what was mine. But Marcus? He was her masterpiece of cruelty. It started in high school with Jake Morrison. We dated for 6 months, my first real boyfriend. The night of homecoming, I found them making out in his car. He kissed me, she'd cried to our parents. I tried to stop him. Jake was banned from our house, and I was told to stop being so dramatic. Then came the Peton Scholarship. I'd worked 3 years for it, volunteering, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, building houses with Habitat for Humanity. The day before final interviews, my portfolio mysteriously disappeared. Sophia found it later, water-damaged and ruined. She went to the interview instead, claiming she'd always been interested in humanitarian work. She got the scholarship. She never used it for anything humanitarian, but those were just warm-ups compared to Marcus. We'd met at an architecture conference. He was charming, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. For 2 years, we built a life together. We had plans, a firm of our own, a house in the suburbs, maybe kids someday. Sophia had been living in Miami then, working as an influencer. She came home for Thanksgiving last year, saw my ring, saw my happiness, and something shifted in her eyes. I should have known then. By Christmas, she was texting him constantly. Work stuff, she'd say. She didn't work in architecture. By Valentine's Day, she was showing up at our dinner dates. What a coincidence. By April, I was finding her earring in our bedroom. Marcus said I was crazy, that it must have fallen out when she'd helped us move furniture. 3 weeks later, I came home early from a business trip. The sound that escaped me when I saw them wasn't quite human. But what hurt more than the betrayal were Marcus's first words. She's everything you're not. Spontaneous, fun, exciting. All the things that meant not boring like Fiona. They moved in together the next week. Our parents threw them a housewarming party. I wasn't invited, but Mom made sure to tell me how happy they looked. But here's what Sophia never understood about taking everything from me. She never bothered to look closely at what she was stealing. She saw the surface. The handsome fiancé, the ring, the wedding plans. She didn't see the debt, the lies, the credit cards Marcus had opened in my name. She definitely didn't see what Grandma had seen, or what was waiting in that wooden box. The numbers haunted me at night. $50,000. That's what I'd already spent on our wedding, deposits I couldn't get back. The dress, the venue, the catering for 200 guests who would now be watching my sister marry my fiancé. But the financial hit was just the beginning. The morning after I'd caught them, I'd walked into Brennan and Associates, where I'd worked for 7 years, to find everyone staring. Someone had seen Marcus leaving our apartment building with a suitcase. Someone else had seen Sophia's Instagram story from my bedroom. By lunch, I was the office scandal. Maybe you should take some time off, my boss, Richard, had suggested, just until things calmed down. That time off cost me the Waterfront Plaza project, a $40 million development I'd been leading for 2 years. They gave it to Bradley, who'd been there 6 months. We need someone without distractions, Richard had explained. The promotion I'd been promised? Gone. The bonus I'd been counting on to pay off my student loans? Evaporated. My professional reputation in tatters. Meanwhile, our family's architecture firm, Anderson and Associates, the company Grandma Eleanor had built from nothing, was hemorrhaging money. Bad investments my father had made. Contracts that fell through. We were 3 months from bankruptcy, though my parents kept pretending everything was fine. We need Sophia's wedding to be perfect, Mom had said just last week. The Thompsons are coming, and they might invest. The Thompsons, Marcus's wealthy parents, who had no idea their son was drowning in gambling debt. Dad had actually called me about it. You should come to the wedding, Fiona, for the family business. She stole my fiancé. You need to stop being so selfish. This is bigger than your feelings. I'd hung up on him. Then I'd called my accountant and learned exactly how bad things were. If the company went under, I'd lose everything. My inheritance, my portfolio, my entire future. That's when I'd really started paying attention to the documents James Mitchell had been trying to show me. That's when I'd learned what Grandma Eleanor had really left behind. Your grandmother was a very smart woman, James had said, sliding the papers across his desk. She knew exactly what she was doing. The company was worth $8 million if you knew where to look. And Grandma had made sure I would be the one looking. Dad actually said I should have tried harder to keep Marcus happy, as if his happiness was my responsibility, as if I was the one who'd failed. The social media massacre started within hours. Sophia had posted their engagement photo on every platform, that perfect sunset shot on the beach, her hand strategically placed to show off my grandmother's ring, the one Marcus had proposed to me with. The caption read, "When you know, you know. Sometimes love finds you in unexpected places. Can't wait to marry my best friend. Hashtag our true love, hashtag soulmates, hashtag blessed bride." 500 likes in the first hour. Comments from our mutual friends, my friends, congratulating her. You two are perfect together. Love wins. So happy for you both. Not one person asked about me. At work, I became invisible in a different way. Conversations stopped when I walked by. Lunch invitations dried up. The annual gala I'd organized for 5 years? They asked Jennifer to take over. "We just think you need less on your plate right now," Richard had said. My college roommate, Ashley, unfriended me after Sophia told everyone I'd been emotionally abusive to Marcus. My book club disbanded rather than pick sides. Even my yoga instructor suggested I might be bringing negative energy to class. The worst part was the pity. The few people who still talked to me looked at me like I was broken. "How are you holding up?" they'd ask, voices dripping with fake concern, hungry for drama to share at happy hour. Rachel stayed loyal, but even she didn't understand. "Just move on," she'd said. "Living well is the best revenge." But I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in justice. There's a difference. Sophia's social media became a daily torture. I couldn't stop watching. Pictures from my vendors, my florist, my caterer, my venue. She was literally living my wedding, just with a different groom. No, the same groom I'd chosen. The one who was supposed to be mine. Tasting cakes today, with a photo at my favorite bakery, where I'd already put down a deposit. Found the dress at the same boutique where I'd bought mine. Planning the honeymoon of our dreams to Italy. The exact itinerary I'd researched for months. Each post was a knife twisted with precision. She knew I'd see them. She was counting on it. But while she was posting pictures, I was having different conversations with lawyers, with accountants, with people who'd worked with Grandma Eleanor for decades. "Your sister has no idea, does she?" James Mitchell had asked during our third meeting. "No," I'd replied, finally allowing myself a small smile. "She's too busy planning her perfect wedding." If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, you know this pain. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Before I reveal what was in that box, I want to ask you something. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have gone to the wedding? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button. It really helps other people find stories like this. Now, let me tell you about the conversation that changed everything. 3 days before the wedding, Sophia called. I recognized her ringtone, Material Girl, because, of course, it was, and almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "You're not actually coming, right?" Her voice was sugar-sweet poison. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Silence. Then, "Fiona, don't embarrass yourself." "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." "Look, I know you're hurt." I laughed, and even I was surprised by how calm I sounded. "I'm not hurt, Sophie. I'm grateful. Grateful. You did me a favor. Marcus is all yours." Another pause. I could practically hear her trying to figure out my angle. "Just don't wear white or anything psycho." "Wouldn't dream of it," I lied smoothly. She hung up first. 5 minutes later, Marcus texted, "Can we talk?" Then, "I'm sorry about how things happened." Then, "You deserve to know the truth." Then, "It's about the money." That last one made me pause. He didn't know about Grandma's will. That was still sealed. So, what money was he talking about? I didn't respond, but I screenshotted everything. The next morning, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in my doorway in her Chanel suit, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "You need to stay home Saturday. It's a free country, Mom. Fiona, please. Just this once. Think of the family." Like Sophia thought of family when she slept with my fiancé? Mom's face tightened. "That's different. They fell in love in my bed." "You're being crude." "I'm being honest. There's a difference." She actually pulled out her checkbook. "Yes, a checkbook in 2024. How much will it take for you to stay away? 5,000? 10. I stared at her. My own mother, trying to buy my absence from my sister's wedding to my ex-fiancé. "Keep your money," I said quietly. "You're going to need it." What's that supposed to mean? Ask Dad about the Patterson contract. Ask him about the loans he took out against the company. Her face went pale. "How do you goodbye, Mom?" After she left, I called James Mitchell. "Is everything ready?" "The documents are authenticated and sealed. The board members have been notified to be on standby." "And the timing?" "Whenever you're ready, Miss Anderson. Your grandmother made sure of that." I hung up and looked at the white Versace dress hanging on my closet door. Almost time. The family intervention came Friday night, less than 18 hours before the wedding. They ambushed me at my apartment. Mom, Dad, and Aunt Patricia, the family enforcer. This has gone far enough, Dad started, settling into my couch like he owned it. You will not ruin your sister's wedding. I'm not ruining anything. I'm attending as invited. Aunt Patricia clutched her pearls. The entire extended family will be there. The Washingtons, the Clearys, the Brennans. What will people think? The truth. Don't be smart, Dad snapped. The company needs this wedding to go perfectly. Marcus's family has connections. Marcus is $200,000 in debt, I said calmly. Did he mention that? The room went quiet. Mom recovered first. You're lying. Gambling debts, credit cards, a failed business venture in Miami. I pulled up the files on my phone. I had a private investigator look into it after I found them together. I wanted to know what kind of man I'd almost married. Dad's face was turning purple. You had no right. I had every right. He opened 3 credit cards in my name. I'm still fighting the fraud charges. This is exactly why he left you, Mom said coldly. You're so controlling. He didn't leave me. He cheated on me with my sister, who's welcome to him. Stop being vindictive, Aunt Patricia said. Family supports family. Where was that support when I needed it? You're the older one, the responsible one. Act like it. My phone buzzed. James Mitchell. Final review complete. Board members confirmed for emergency meeting Monday, 9 a.m. I looked at my family. These people who'd never once taken my side, who'd spent my entire life making me smaller so Sophia could shine brighter. I'll see you all tomorrow, I said, standing up. 2 o'clock sharp. Dad stood too, trying to loom over me. If you show up tomorrow, what? You'll disown me? Cut me off? You already did that when you gave Sophia my wedding vendors, my venue, my life. We're trying to save the family business. No, I said, opening my door. You're trying to save yourselves. There's a difference. As they filed out, Mom turned back. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. I smiled then. My first real smile in months. We'll see about that. After they left, I opened the wooden box one more time, running my fingers over the legal documents inside. Grandma Eleanor's real will, the one she'd hidden from everyone except James Mitchell. Tomorrow, everything would change. Grandma Eleanor had died 6 months ago on a rainy Tuesday in January. I'd been the only one with her at the end, holding her papery hand while she struggled for breath. Patience, my dear, she'd whispered, her eyes still sharp despite the morphine. The quiet ones changed the world. At her funeral, Sophia had sobbed dramatically, despite not visiting once during Grandma's 3-month battle with cancer. She'd even tried to give a eulogy, but broke down after 2 sentences. Everyone comforted her. Oh, Sophie, she's so sensitive. I'd given no eulogy. I'd sat in the back, dry-eyed, remembering the real Eleanor Anderson, the woman who'd built an architecture firm from nothing in 1978, when women weren't supposed to run businesses. 2 weeks after the funeral, James Mitchell had called. Your grandmother left specific instructions. The will reading is postponed for 6 months. Why? She said you'd understand when the time was right. I hadn't understood then, but as spring turned to summer and my life fell apart piece by painful piece, I started getting calls from James, from Grandma's old business partners, from people I'd never heard of who knew things about our family's company that even Dad didn't know. Your grandmother was concerned, James had said during our first real meeting, about your father's management, about your sister's influence, but mostly about you. About me. She said you were the only one who understood what she'd built, the only one who cared about legacy instead of lifestyle. He'd shown me documents, incorporation papers, patent filings, property deeds. Anderson and Associates was worth far more than anyone knew. Grandma had been quietly buying back shares for decades, placing them in a trust. But there are conditions, James had explained, very specific conditions. The main one, the heir had to be unmarried or married to someone approved by the board of directors. Grandma's hand-picked board, not Dad's golf buddies. Someone financially stable, someone of good character. She knew, I'd said, understanding finally dawning. She knew about Marcus. She suspected. She also knew about your sister's patterns. So if Sophia marries Marcus, she forfeits any claim to the inheritance? And if she's already married to him when the will is read, she can't contest it. James had smiled. Your grandmother was a very strategic woman. Now, the night before the wedding, I held the sealed will in my hands. 6 months exactly since Grandma's death. The timing was perfect. Thank you, I whispered to her memory. For seeing me, for believing in me. Tomorrow, patience would become power. The full scope of Grandma's plan was breathtaking. Anderson and Associates wasn't just a small family firm. It was the tip of an $8 million iceberg. Over 40 years, Grandma had quietly acquired patents, properties, and partnerships, keeping them in separate entities that only she controlled. The office building on 5th Street? Owned by a trust. The revolutionary design software the firm used? She held the patent. The contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies? Personal relationships she'd maintained outside the official business. Your father never bothered to look, James had explained, spreading the documents across his conference table. He assumed he knew everything about the company because his name was on the door. But the conditions for inheritance were ironclad. The heir must be of Anderson blood, unmarried or married to someone of demonstrable financial stability, approved by the board of directors within 30 days of the will's reading. Of sound moral character as determined by specific criteria, that last one was Grandma's master stroke. She defined moral character in legal terms: no criminal record, no outstanding debts over $50,000, no history of marital infidelity with an engaged or married person. She really thought of everything, I'd marveled. She had 6 months after your engagement to refine the language, James had said. She was concerned about Marcus from the start, but she never said anything. She believed in letting people reveal themselves. The board of directors was equally strategic. 5 people Grandma had worked with for decades, all with unshakable integrity. They'd been waiting, silent partners in her plan. What happens if no one meets the conditions? I'd asked. The entire estate goes to the International Women's Architecture Foundation. And if Sophia contests? She can try. But marrying a man with over $200,000 in gambling debts who committed credit fraud against her own sister. James had shaken his head. No judge would override your grandmother's wishes for that. The wedding invitation on my coffee table seemed to mock me. Come see what true love looks like. True love. Sophia thought she'd won because she'd taken Marcus. She had no idea she'd actually lost everything the moment she said, I do. The wooden box sat beside the invitation, containing not just the will, but also Marcus's credit reports, the fraud documentation, and 3 years of Grandma's personal letters expressing her concerns about Sophia's character. Tomorrow, at exactly the right moment, the truth would set everyone free, whether they wanted to be free or not. The wedding reception was already in full swing when I arrived. Cocktail hour before the ceremony, Sophia's idea of sophistication. I could hear the laughter floating from the garden where guests mingled with champagne and judgment. The seating chart by the entrance told me everything I needed to know about my place in the circus. Table 19, the last table in the corner by the kitchen doors. I was seated with the catering staff's families and plus ones who'd been added last minute. Fiona, Brittany, one of Sophia's bridesmaids, appeared with a gaggle of others. They all wore matching blush pink dresses and identical smirks. We didn't think you'd actually come. Wouldn't miss it, I said smoothly, signing the guest book with a steady hand. They giggled behind manicured hands, already texting furiously. Within minutes, the whispers spread through the garden like wildfire. I made my way outside, where 200 guests pretended not to stare. The garden was decorated exactly as I'd planned for my wedding: white roses, string lights, even the same string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. Then I saw him, Richard Brennan, CEO of Brennan Industries, our biggest potential client. He was chatting with Marcus's parents, who were putting on their best show of wealth despite their son's debts. Fiona, Richard nodded, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't expect to see you here. Family is family, I replied, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Across the garden, I spotted another surprise: 3 members of Grandma's board. They weren't supposed to be here, but each caught my eye and nodded slightly. James Mitchell had been busy. The wedding coordinator announced it was time to take seats for the ceremony. As I walked past the bridal suite window, I heard Sophia's voice from above. Is she really here? In white. God, she's so pathetic. Marcus's response was muffled, but I caught the words inheritance and mistake. I settled into my chair at table 19, surrounded by strangers who had no idea who I was. Perfect. I wanted to be invisible until the moment I wasn't. The string quartet shifted to the processional music. Guests turned toward the aisle, phones raised to capture the perfect moment. The bridesmaids began their walk, each one shooting me a look of pity or disgust as they passed. Then came Marcus, taking his place at the altar with barely a glance in my direction. His best man whispered something that made him laugh nervously. The music swelled. Everyone stood, and there was Sophia, radiant in white, walking toward her destiny. She had no idea how right she was about true love being revealed today. The ceremony proceeded like a beautifully orchestrated insult. Father Michael spoke about love, commitment, and honesty, while Marcus shifted nervously and Sophia beamed with triumph. Then came the personal vows. Of course, Sophia had insisted on personal vows. She went first, her voice carrying across the garden with practiced emotion. Marcus, you came into my life when I least expected it. You showed me what true love really looks like. Some people, she paused, glancing directly at me, go through life thinking they know what love is. But real love, true love, can't be forced. It can't be scheduled or planned. It just happens. And when it does, nothing and no one can stand in its way. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Several people turned to look at me, waiting for a reaction. I kept my face perfectly neutral, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Marcus's vows were shorter, vaguer. Sophia, you bring excitement to my life. You're spontaneous, fun, everything I never knew I needed. He swallowed hard. You make me feel alive in ways I never expected. I noticed he never used the word love. Not once. Father Michael smiled benevolently. These two souls have found each other against all odds, overcoming obstacles to be here today. Obstacles. Is that what I was now? An obstacle they'd overcome? Marriage is a sacred bond, Father Michael continued. It requires honesty, trust, and mutual respect. It requires both partners to come together freely, without reservation or hidden agendas. I saw Marcus's jaw clench at hidden agendas. He knew about his debts. He knew what he was really after. But did Sophia? Before we continue, Father Michael said, I must remind everyone that marriage is not just a union of hearts, but also a legal contract, binding in the eyes of both God and law. Several of Grandma's board members leaned forward slightly. They knew what was coming. If anyone here knows of any legal impediment to this marriage, any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The garden went silent. 200 people held their breath. Sophia turned slightly, looking directly at me with a smirk that said, I dare you. I stood up. Gasps rippled through the crowd like dominoes falling. Sophia's face went from smug to shocked. Marcus went white as paper. I object, I said, my voice clear and steady. On legal grounds. Father Michael blinked in surprise. Legal grounds. I walked forward, pulling the wooden box from my purse. I have documents that materially affect this union. The silence was deafening. This was the moment everything changed. If someone had humiliated you like this, would you have stayed silent, or would you have done what I did next? I'm curious, what's the biggest betrayal you've overcome? Share in the comments if you're comfortable. Your story might help someone else going through the same thing. And remember, I object on legal grounds. My voice carried across the garden with a clarity that surprised even me. 200 faces turned in unison, a sea of shock and disbelief. Someone's champagne glass hit the ground with a sharp crack. Father Michael looked like he'd never actually had anyone object before. Miss Anderson, this is highly irregular. I have documentation that materially affects this union, I said, walking down the aisle with measured steps. My white Versace dress caught the afternoon light, And I heard someone whisper, "She wore white to her sister's wedding." Yes, I did. Fiona, sit down. My mother's voice cracked like a whip from the front row. I ignored her, reaching the altar where Sophia stood frozen, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Marcus looked like he might bolt at any second. "These are legal documents," I said, handing the wooden box to Father Michael. "Authenticated and notarized, concerning the estate of Eleanor Anderson and the conditions affecting any marriage within the Anderson family." Father Michael hesitated. "I don't think read them." James Mitchell stood up from his seat in the fifth row. "I'm James Mitchell, attorney for the Anderson estate. Those documents are legally binding and time-sensitive." Sophia finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. You can't just—" "Actually, I can." I turned to face the crowd, my voice carrying clearly. 6 months ago, our grandmother, Eleanor Anderson, passed away. What most of you don't know is that she left behind a very specific will, with very specific conditions. "You're lying," Sophia hissed. "The will was read. I was there." "That was the preliminary will," James Mitchell said, walking forward. "The full estate documentation was sealed for 6 months, as per Mrs. Anderson's explicit instructions. Today marks exactly 6 months since her passing." Father Michael opened the box with shaking hands, pulling out the thick legal documents. His eyes widened as he read. This says the entire Anderson estate, valued at $8 million, is left to Fiona Anderson conditional upon her marital status." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw Richard Brennan lean forward, suddenly very interested. "It states that the heir must be either unmarried or married to someone of demonstrable financial stability approved by the board of directors." Father Michael continued, his voice growing stronger. "It also states that any Anderson family member who marries someone with outstanding debts exceeding $50,000 or a history of financial fraud forfeits all claims to the estate." Marcus swayed on his feet. Sophia grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "Furthermore," Father Michael read, "any family member who engages in marital infidelity with an engaged person is permanently excluded from inheritance." The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop in that garden. "How much debt do you have, Marcus?" I asked conversationally. "Last count was over 200,000, wasn't it? Plus the credit cards you opened in my name." The crowd erupted. Father Michael's voice echoed across the stunned garden as he continued, reading from the will, each word falling like a hammer blow. "The entire Anderson estate, including Anderson and Associates architecture firm, all associated patents, properties, and partnerships valued at $8 million, is hereby bequeathed to Fiona Marie Anderson." Sophia's face had gone from red to white to an alarming shade of gray. "That's impossible. The company is Dad's. The company is built on Grandma's patents," I said calmly. "Her properties, her partnerships. Dad's been managing it, but he never owned it. Grandma made sure of that." James Mitchell pulled out additional documents. Mrs. Eleanor Anderson retained 78% ownership through various trusts and holding companies. She was very specific about the conditions for inheritance. "This is fraud." Marcus finally found his voice. "You can't just, Mr. Thompson," James addressed him directly. "Are you aware that opening credit cards in another person's name is a federal crime? Miss Anderson has chosen not to press charges yet." The crowd was buzzing now. Phones coming out, people recording. This would be all over social media within hours. Father Michael cleared his throat. "There is more. It states here that any marriage performed under false pretenses, specifically regarding financial status or with the intent to defraud, can be challenged in court." "We're not married yet," Sophia shrieked. "This doesn't apply." Actually, one of the board members, Mrs. Chin, stood up. "The moment you announced your engagement publicly, you triggered the morality clause. Marrying your sister's fiancé while he was still engaged to her constitutes demonstrable lack of moral character as defined in Section 7, subsection 3. You knew." Sophia turned on me, her carefully styled hair coming undone. "You knew about this the whole time?" "I found out 2 weeks ago," I said, "right after you sent me that lovely invitation telling me to come see what true love looks like." But if you're married to Marcus, Sophia started desperately. I'm not married to Marcus. You are. Or we're about to be. I turned to the crowd. Marcus Thompson has over $200,000 in gambling debts, 3 maxed-out credit cards in my name, and a failed business that he never disclosed. The board would never approve him. Which means if I had married him, I would have lost everything, too. The implications hit Sophia like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her designer heels catching on her train. You did me a favor, Sophie, I continued. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life, and in return, you get Marcus, debts and all, while I get the company, the properties, and the future grandma always intended for me. The prenup. Marcus suddenly shouted. Sophie, the prenup you signed. Everyone turned to stare at him. What prenup? Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. The one where you agreed to keep finances separate? Marcus said desperately. Where you waived claims to each other's assets? You mean the one protecting your assets? Sophia laughed hysterically. What assets, Marcus? Your debt. The garden erupted into chaos. The unraveling happened in real time, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Marcus grabbed Sophia's hands, his voice desperate. Sophie, we can work this out. She yanked away from him. Work what out? You're broke. You lied to me. I never lied. You said you were successful. You said you had investments. I do have investments. In what? Poker games? She was screaming now, mascara running down her cheeks. You knew about the inheritance? You knew, and you chose me anyway. Marcus's silence was damning. The truth was written all over his face. He thought Sophia would inherit, not me. He'd bet on the wrong sister. You used me, Sophia whispered, the realization hitting her. You couldn't get Fiona's money, so you thought you'd get mine. My parents had rushed to the altar, Mom trying to salvage something, anything. This is a family matter. Everyone, please. Mrs. Anderson. Richard Brennan's voice cut through the chaos. Is it true your husband has been managing a company he doesn't actually own? Dad's face went purple. This is preposterous. Actually, James Mitchell interrupted. I have documentation here showing that Mr. Anderson has taken out several loans against company assets he doesn't own. That's fraud. The board will be pursuing legal action. The board? Dad sputtered. What board? I'm the president. You were, Mrs. Chin corrected, the president of a company you never owned. Your position is terminated effective immediately. Miss Fiona Anderson is the new CEO, pending board approval, which I can assure you she'll receive unanimously. The dominoes kept falling. Marcus's parents were backing away from the altar, his mother's face a mask of horror as she realized her son's debts were now her problem again. The Thompsons, who'd been so proud moments before, looked like they wanted to disappear. The wedding is off, Father Michael announced, unnecessarily. The altar looked like a war zone. Sophia's bouquet trampled, Marcus's boutonniere crushed, the unity candle knocked over. This isn't over. Sophia snarled at me, her fairy tale princess image completely shattered. I'll contest this. I'll sue. With what money? I asked quietly. You just quit your job to plan this wedding. Marcus is in debt. Mama and Dad are about to be investigated for fraud. And you signed a prenup waiving financial claims. The truth of her situation hit her like a sledgehammer. She'd given up everything for a man who was worse than broke. He was a liability. Grandma always said you were special, Sophia said bitterly. Her precious Fiona. No, I corrected. She said I was patient. There's a difference. James Mitchell stepped forward. The board meeting is Monday at 9 a.m., Miss Anderson. We'll need you there to formally accept your position. I nodded, then looked at the stunned crowd. Thank you all for coming. I believe the reception is still paid for my deposit, actually. Please enjoy the party. Then I turned and walked back down the aisle, leaving chaos in my wake. The legal machinery started turning before I even reached my car. James Mitchell was a maestro, conducting a symphony of consequences. Mr. Thompson, he called out, stopping Marcus from fleeing. You'll need to stay. The police have some questions about those fraudulent credit cards. 2 officers had appeared. Apparently, James had anticipated this moment. They weren't arresting Marcus, not yet, but the questioning would be enough to destroy what was left of his reputation. "This is entrapment," Marcus shouted. "She set me up." "You set yourself up the moment you committed fraud," Officer Williams said calmly. "We just need to verify some signatures." Meanwhile, the board members had cornered my father. Mrs. Chin was holding a tablet, scrolling through financial records. "Mr. Anderson, can you explain this withdrawal from the company account? And this one? And these 17 others? Those were business expenses for your personal mortgage." Mr. Yamamoto, another board member, raised an eyebrow. "That's embezzlement." "I'm the president. You were the president of a company you never owned," Mrs. Chin corrected. The wedding guests had split into two camps, those fleeing the drama and those recording every second. I saw at least 3 people live streaming. #wedding crash. Grandma was probably already trending. Sophia tried one last desperate play. "Wait. If Marcus and I don't get married, then Fiona can marry him and lose everything." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Sophie, I wouldn't marry Marcus now if he was the last man on earth. Besides, the fraud charges make him ineligible under Grandma's morality clause. He's toxic to any Anderson inheritance." "You planned this," she accused. "You knew I'd steal him. I suspected you'd try. You always want what's mine, but Marcus?" Marcus was a surprise. "I didn't know about his debts until after I caught you together." Funny how things work out. Richard Brennan approached me as I reached my car. "Miss Anderson, Brennan Industries would like to discuss a partnership with Anderson and Associates. Under your leadership, of course." "I'll have my office call you Monday," I said professionally, though inside I was screaming with joy. This was the contract Dad had been chasing for 2 years. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said quietly. "She always said you were the future of the company." As I drove away, I saw the scene in my rearview mirror. Sophia sobbing on the altar, Marcus being questioned by police, my parents screaming at James Mitchell, and 200 guests capturing every moment for posterity. The reception hall was still set up. The cake still waiting to be cut. The band probably wondering if they should play. My perfect wedding turned into Sophia's perfect disaster. Justice had been served, and it was delicious. By Sunday morning, the video had gone viral. Bride's sister objects with $8 million will had 3 million views and counting. Someone had caught the entire thing, from my entrance in white to Sophia's complete meltdown. The comments were brutal, but mostly on my side. The sister got exactly what she deserved. Grandma playing 4D chess from beyond the grave. Imagine fumbling $8 million for a broke cheater. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Rachel called first. "Girl, you're famous. Also, remind me never to cross you." But the real fallout was just beginning. Sophia's Instagram, where she documented every moment of wedding planning, became a graveyard of deleted posts and vicious comments. Her influencer career was over before it started. Marcus had disappeared completely. His social media went dark. His apartment was already listed for rent, and rumor had it he'd fled to his parents' house in Connecticut. The fraud investigation was ongoing, but my lawyer assured me he'd at least have to pay back the money he'd stolen. The professional aftermath was even more dramatic. By Monday morning, 3 major clients had reached out to Anderson and Associates, specifically requesting to work with me. The story of a woman who'd quietly built her success while her family underestimated her. That was the kind of leadership they wanted. "Your grandmother was a legend," one CEO told me. "She built this company when women weren't supposed to run businesses. Looks like it's in good hands." The board meeting was a formality. Unanimous approval, just as James had predicted. I was officially CEO of Anderson and Associates, with full control of an $8 million empire I'd helped build but never thought I'd run. Dad tried to show up at the office Monday afternoon. Security turned him away. I'd had his access revoked. The investigation into his embezzlement was moving forward. He'd probably avoid jail time, but his reputation was destroyed. Mom called 17 times before I finally answered. "How could you do this to your family?" "I didn't do anything, Mom. I just stopped letting you do things to me. Your sister is destroyed. She'll survive. Maybe she'll even learn something. She had to move back home. Then maybe you can finally teach her about consequences." The call ended with Mom crying about how I'd ruined everything. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I hadn't ruined anything. I'd revealed the truth. Tuesday's headline in the business section: Anderson and Associates under new leadership, stock soars. Wednesday's update: Marcus Thompson arrested for credit fraud. Thursday's twist: Sophia starts job at Starbucks. Friday's victory: Brennan Industries signs $40 million contract with Anderson and Associates. Grandma had been right. The quiet ones do change the world. We just do it with paperwork instead of noise. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, my family attempted reconciliation. They showed up at my new office, the corner suite that used to be Dad's, looking like refugees from their former life. Dad had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. The investigation had frozen his personal assets. Mom's designer clothes looked wrinkled, her perfect hair unstyled. And Sophia, she looked hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left only the shell. "We need to talk," Dad started, but his usual commanding tone was gone. "About what? The embezzlement charges? The lawyers are handling that." "About the family," Mom said weakly. "We're still family, are we? Because family doesn't usually try to destroy each other. You destroyed us." Sophia finally spoke, her voice raw. "You took everything. I took what was mine. What Grandma left me. What you tried to steal. I didn't know about the will, but you knew Marcus was my fiancé. You knew the wedding vendors were mine. You knew the pain you were causing, and you enjoyed it." Silence. For the first time in our lives, Sophia had no comeback. "Grandma left me a letter," I said, pulling it from my desk drawer. "Want to hear what she wrote?" They stared as I read, "My dearest Fiona, if you're reading this, then my plan worked. I've watched your family diminish you for years. Watched them take your kindness for weakness. Your father is a fool who values appearance over substance. Your mother enables the worst in people. And Sophia is what happens when beauty comes without character. But you, my dear, you have both strength and kindness. The company was always meant to be yours. I just had to make sure you got it without them destroying you first. Be patient. Wait for them to reveal themselves. Then rise." Mom was crying. Dad looked stunned. Sophia stared at the floor. "She saw us," Dad whispered. "All of us. She loved you anyway," I said. "But she didn't trust you. There's a difference." "What do we do now?" Mom asked. "You figure it out. Without my money, without my help, without using me as your emotional support system. For once in your lives, handle your own consequences." "You're really going to abandon us?" Sophia asked. "I'm going to do what you taught me," I replied. "I'm going to put myself first." They left quietly, defeated. I wasn't celebrating their downfall. I was just done being responsible for it. That night, I found another letter from Grandma, one James had saved for after the confrontation. "Forgiveness will come in time, but boundaries come first. I'm proud of you." She'd known everything, planned everything. Even this. 6 months later, my life was unrecognizable in the best possible way. Anderson and Associates had landed 3 major international contracts. We'd hired 50 new employees, including some of the best architects in the country who wanted to work for a firm that valued merit over nepotism. The company was thriving under my leadership, and everyone knew it. The fraud charges against Marcus had stuck. He'd pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, but would be paying restitution for years. Last I heard, he was working at his uncle's car dealership in New Jersey. Probably sweet-talking customers the way he'd once talked me. Sophia had surprised everyone, maybe even herself. After hitting rock bottom, she'd actually started rebuilding. She was still working at Starbucks, but she'd also enrolled in community college for business classes, paying her own way for the first time in her life. We hadn't spoken in months, but I'd heard from Mom that she was in therapy, finally dealing with years of entitlement and jealousy. My parents had downsized everything: the house, the cars, the lifestyle. Dad's embezzlement case had been settled out of court, but his reputation in the business world was finished. He'd taken a job as a junior consultant at a small firm. Mom had started working too, as a receptionist at a dental office. They were learning at 60 what it meant to earn rather than take. "They ask about you," Rachel told me over lunch. Your mom comes into the salon sometimes. She always asks how you are. And I tell her you're thriving, I said, because you are. She was right. I'd started dating again, carefully, with boundaries firmly in place. His name was Daniel, a civil engineer who'd never heard of my family drama until our third date. He'd listened to the whole story, then said, "Your grandmother sounds like she was brilliant, and so are you." He was kind, stable, debt-free, and completely his own person. The board would definitely approve. Not that I was thinking that far ahead. I'd learned not to rush into anything. The most unexpected development was the letter I'd received from Sophia last week. "Fiona, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but therapy requires me to make amends. Not for forgiveness, but for accountability. I was cruel to you. I took everything I could because I was jealous of everything you were. You were smart, talented, hardworking, everything I wasn't. Instead of trying to be better, I tried to make you smaller. Marcus was never about love. He was about winning, about proving I could take anything from you. I see now how pathetic that was. You gave me a gift at that wedding, though you didn't mean to. You showed me who I really was. It was ugly, but it was necessary. I'm working on being better. Not for you, not for the family, but for myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, Sophia." I'd read it 3 times, then filed it away. Maybe someday we'd talk. Maybe not. But for now, boundaries were more important than bridges. Grandma's portrait hung in my office now, watching over the empire she'd built, and I was expanding. Sometimes I talked to it, telling her about contracts won and challenges overcome. "You taught me the most important lesson," I said to her picture. "That being kind doesn't mean being weak. That patience isn't the same as passivity, and that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living your truth and letting others face theirs." The company was mine. The future was mine. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. That's my story of how I turned betrayal into triumph without raising my voice or throwing a punch. Just patience, preparation, and perfect timing.